99% of employees never make it to executive level. And if you're watching this, you're probably worried that you might be part of that 99%. So let's make sure that you're not. I spent 15 years in corporate leadership. I watched hundreds of talented people get stuck, but I also helped dozens break through to executive roles. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 3 invisible barriers that keep great employees trapped in middle management forever, so that you can actually make it to the executive level. Now, if you're watching this video, there's probably a good chance that this is happening to you right now. You've been performing well, hitting your targets, getting good reviews from your manager, and your manager may be saying, that you're doing great. But when promotion time comes, somebody else gets the role again, and you're left wondering, what is it that I'm missing here? Most people either give up on their promotion ambitions and just settle for where they are, or they decide that the answer is just to work harder and stay later and take on more projects. But both of those decisions will only lead to more dissatisfaction. And I know, because that's exactly what happened to me for years in my career. I spent my first 8 years doing everything right, according to middle management rules. I hit my targets, I delivered great results, and I got really good reviews from my boss. My boss loved me. But when it came time for promotion, I got passed over more than once. And I was really annoyed at the system, annoyed with myself. And I thought, okay, what more do they want from me? I'm outperforming everyone. And then I had a conversation with a mentor, a really senior partner. And he asked me one question that changed everything. He said, how many times in the last 6 months have you had a strategic conversation with someone 2 levels above you? I was like, what? That's not my job. I kind of do what my boss tells me to do. And unfortunately, he laughed. But then he says, look, that's exactly why you're stuck. You're measuring your performance as a manager, things like execution, delivery, team satisfaction, but you won't get promoted from being a manager for those things. So I changed what I was optimizing for. And within 3 months, I was attending the leadership team meetings for my part of the business. And I was the most junior person at that table. Within a year, I was a director. Because you see, the gap between middle management and an executive level isn't about being better at your job. It's about understanding the invisible barriers that nobody tells you about. And these are the barriers that keep 99% of people stuck, while the other 1% just seem to glide effortlessly into their promotions. And most people don't even know these barriers exist. And that's why they stay stuck. So I'm going to tell you what they are. So the first barrier is all about being too valuable in your current role. Now, look, I know that might sound a little bit crazy, but hear me out. So if you're really good at your current job, your company has no incentive to promote you. Why would they move their best performing manager into a role where they're unproven, when they can just keep you exactly where you are, delivering great results? So you think about it from their perspective, it makes sense, right? You're crushing it, your team loves you, your projects are getting done on time. Why would anybody want to risk that? So the mistake that people make is thinking that if I just prove how good I am at this job, they'll promote me to the next job. But that's actually backwards. The truth is that you'll get promoted based on your potential for the next level, not your performance at the current level. So let me give you an example. I worked with a director of operations. His name is Marcus. He's a brilliant executor. His department ran like absolute clockwork. He had the best operational metrics in his company. But for 4 years, he kept getting passed over for VP of operations. And all because he'd made himself irreplaceable at that director level. His leadership team literally said, look, we can't really afford to move Marcus, who would run operations. So what did we do? Marcus started systematically making himself replaceable. He documented every process. He trained his senior managers to think like him. He delegated the things that only he was doing. And within 6 months, his department could run without him. And that's when they promoted him to VP. Because now the question wasn't, who will we replace Marcus with? It was, what bigger problems can Marcus solve? And the lesson here is to stop trying to be indispensable at your current level. Start preparing your replacement. Document everything, train your team, make yourself unnecessary. That's how you become promotable. But here's a critical point. Don't just suddenly stop performing in your current role. That's not a good idea. You need to maintain your results while you're transferring your knowledge and responsibilities to your team. It's a bit of a balancing act in this period of time. You've got to make sure that you're performing well and you're building systems so that other people can take over from you. The second barrier is when you're invisible to the people who matter. So your boss probably doesn't decide if you get promoted to executive or not. Your boss's boss does, and their peers, and probably the CEO. And these are the people you probably never talk to. Most people think, if I do great work, someone's going to notice. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. At the executive level, decisions get made in rooms you're not in by people who barely know you exist. You could be the best performer in your department, but if the VP of sales has never heard your name, you're not getting promoted to executive. Let me tell you about James. James was a senior manager in finance. He was respected by his direct manager, but when a VP of finance role opened up, he didn't even get interviewed. When the CEO asked the leadership team, who should we consider for this VP of finance role, nobody mentioned James. Not because they didn't like him, but because they didn't know him. He spent 6 years being great at his job, but invisible to senior leadership. So what did we change? James started getting strategically visible. He volunteered for cross-functional projects that put him in rooms with other VPs. He started speaking up in all-hands meetings with really thoughtful questions. And he sent quarterly business updates to senior leadership, highlighting wins and insights that he got. This wasn't bragging, it's not self-promotion, but maybe a little bit, but he was making sure that those senior people knew who he was and what value he was bringing to the company. So within a year, when another VP role opened up, his name came up immediately. Because now when leadership thought, like, okay, who's ready for VP? They instantly thought to James. So the lesson here is that you need to be visible to the people maybe 2 or 3 levels above you, not just to your direct manager. So here's how to do it without coming across too obvious, because nobody wants to be that person. Speak up in company meetings with what you think, or ask thoughtful questions about the company's direction. Volunteer for cross-functional projects that put you in rooms with senior leaders from other departments. And send these occasional updates to senior leadership, not weekly, but maybe quarterly. Here's what we accomplished, here's what I learned, here's what I'm testing next. And build relationships across the organization. Have coffees with other VPs and other departments. Ask them about their challenges and maybe offer to help. But this is important. Don't be the person who just talks to talk. Don't send pointless updates that waste people's time. Strategic visibility means that you've got to add value every time someone interacts with you. So make sure you prep for these meetings. If you're just making noise, yes, you'll become visible, but you'll also become annoying, and that will definitely not get you promoted. So the third barrier is when you're thinking like a manager and not like an executive. And this is probably the biggest one. And most people don't even realize that they're doing it. So managers focus on execution. Executives focus on strategy. Managers will spend time optimizing their department or their projects, whereas executives think about the entire business. And until you start thinking like an executive, you won't become one. It's called T-shaped leadership, where you have functional depth, but you can also contribute outside of your core area. So let me show you what this looks like. I was coaching a director called Lisa. She was really frustrated because she kept getting feedback that she wasn't thinking strategically enough. So I asked her, tell me about the last problem you solved. And she said there's a situation where she was falling behind on Q4 deliverables and she restructured their sprint process and they got back on track. And I was like, okay, look, that's a good outcome. It's a good answer. That's exactly what a manager should do. But here's what an executive would have done. They would have asked, why was the team falling behind? Is it a capacity issue? Is it a prioritization issue? And is there a broader impact? Is there a systemic issue here? Lisa was solving the immediate problem, getting really tactical. Whereas an executive would be asking, what does this problem reveal about the organization and what are the bigger changes that we can make? So we changed how Lisa approached every situation. Instead of just fixing things, she started asking more strategic questions. What does this problem tell us about our current processes? How does this impact on the business's objectives? And what would prevent this from happening again across the organization? She started bringing solutions that addressed root causes, not just addressing the symptoms. 6 months later, she was VP. So stop thinking about your department, start thinking about the business. Here's how. Read the company's financial reports. Understand how the business actually makes money. Where are the margins? What drives growth? Actually listen to what's being presented at company town hall meetings. Don't be doing the emails at the same time if it's virtual, because information in there tells you where executives are focusing their time and where your opportunities are. And don't just solve problems on the surface. Ask why. Really dig into what's causing them. And connect your work to business outcomes. Don't report, we completed 15 projects. Report, we completed 15 projects that increased customer retention by 8%, which translates to $2 million in recurring revenue. And think cross-functionally. Your proposal should consider your impact on sales, marketing, operations, and finance, not just your department. So don't wait until you're executive to start thinking this way. You need to demonstrate your executive thinking before you get promoted. And that's what makes you promotable. If you're waiting for a particular title to start thinking strategically, you're never going to get that title. I know what you might be thinking. I'm not senior enough to build relationships with VPs and the CEO. Am I not going to come across as kind of like overstepping? And it's a valid concern, but you won't come across as overstepping if you're adding value. Senior leaders want to see ambitious, strategic thinkers. They're not going to be annoyed by thoughtful questions or your well-researched proposals. What annoys them is people who waste their time or just talk to be seen. So as long as you're showing up with value, you've done your prep, you've got genuine insights, thoughtful questions, and solutions to real problems, you won't be overstepping, you'll actually stand out. Or maybe you're thinking, I just don't have time to focus on being strategically visible. I'm already working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, just keeping up with my current job. And that's exactly the problem. If you're spending that amount of time each week executing, you're stuck in the middle management trap. Executives don't work more hours, they work on different things. You need to delegate more, systematize more, make yourself less necessary to the day-to-day operations. Because if you don't have time to think strategically and build those relationships, you'll never break through to that executive level. And the real question here is, can you afford not to make this shift? Because if nothing changes, you'll be in the exact same spot 5 years from now, watching less qualified people get promoted ahead of you. Now, if you want help building your executive level career strategy so you can actually break through to the next level, click the link in the description below. I've got something for you. You could be like Merv. Within 6 months of us working together, he'd landed his dream CFO job. So if you're looking to get similar results for yourself, click the link in the description below.